show me the way. Show me the way home. Just a man.
All right, we are back on the slack line. This is episode 11 here once again with Jay Wow.
Wow.
And the boss.
The boss is coming.
That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you.
And we are here with Jordan Vazquez and Ken Dresen. We're going to be chatting some end of the world apocalyptic type scenarios. What our thoughts on those inevitabilities, and maybe some extra planetary life, extra galactic life, extra universal life, interstellar life.
Nice.
Anywhere in the universe.
Yeah,
I don't
inter
discriminate.
is not. Yeah, it should be inter, not extra. Intergalactic life. And yeah. So, Jay, wow, how was your week, bud?
Was
The
good.
mustache is coming back nicely.
Yeah, it's growing back again.
Movember's done, so the mustache
It's
returns.
my no Movember. It's a non-statement,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's coming back. It's growing back. It's healthy.
Nice.
It's a good sign.
Nice. We
And
have in
I'm
studio. We have in studio today the producer and star of Mailman, short film coming out of Vancouver. Jordan Vazquez, the producer, Ken Dresen, the star, as the Mailman. What's the deal with the short? Where is it at? What's the timeline?
So right now we have it in. It's going to get a little more coloring done, just make it look a little prettier, and
Like with crayons. I can do
crayons and highlighters, everything. You
Oh,
know,
nice.
get the whole
that.
range. We got the 50 pack, lots of colors, and we're also getting the score is getting a little bit of tweaks done to it.
Nice.
And we're looking to start sending it off to festivals in January.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sounds like
Yeah.
you got it all figured out, like
Yeah.
a real life movie producer or something.
No, I'm competent.
Yeah. All right.
We've just been doing some voice work for the trailer, so
Yeah.
Mhm.
We were doing some voice work.
Yeah.
When is the trailer gonna hit anytime soon?
The trailer will be sending the voice work off to the director Nathan George,
Yeah.
and he'll be putting it into the trailer we have cut together. So
Oh, it's
hopefully
already cut. Just gotta put the
we'll make
voice
some
on.
we'll make some tweaks based on kind of Ken's work, and yeah, expecting that to hit probably beginning of 2018.
Nice.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And Ken, you do some improv theater and stuff like that, right? That's kind of where your background is, I guess. I think they pulled you out of that theater sort of program.
No, you're that's actually
that
Devin
was
Devin
the-
Devin
Yeah,
McKenzie
that's
was
right.
yeah, we picked him up from
That's
the picked him up. We went to see him perform at the Vancouver Theatre Sports League and
That's right.
loved him, and he was
and
nice
Raylan
enough to
Carson
join
too.
us.
Yeah.
So, and Raylan Carson as well was
That's right.
Vancouver Theatre Sports. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
My apologies there, Ken. So
No,
Ken,
that's
you
okay,
did
'cause
say
since-
you had a little bit of improv experience when you were.
I've had a little bit of improv experience.
yeah.
But since working with those two, I've
Yeah.
I've gone to the Vancouver Theatre Sports League, and I've been doing classes with them.
Oh,
and
really?
Going
Nice.
to their master classes.
That's
and
awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
like
Oh.
What type of stuff do you do there?
it. It's all games, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's all based on games, and yeah, even their shows are
Mhm.
games. I mean, there's like a loose storyline, and within it they play games.
Is
Mhm.
it like a theater sports like competition sort of thing, or is it more just like play with the audience type of deal?
What it's supposed to make actors freer. I mean,
Right.
it's all acting exercises, but
Okay.
yeah, it's really entertaining.
Mhm.
Actually, some of my scene study friends just did a main stage production at Yuck Yucks.
Oh,
awesome.
nice.
Oh,
nice.
okay.
Yeah.
Here
That's
in
awesome.
Vancouver.
Yeah,
Cool. I love going to stuff like that. I was just talking to somebody actually. I went clubbing on the weekend, and like it's not really my sort of scene at all, but it was like the plan or whatever. So we go out, end up paying $20 for cover to get into this like lame bar where there's like 50 people max or whatever. Everybody's dancing and grinding on each other. And I thought like, man, $20. I could go watch like a great comedy show just like Yuck Yucks or whatever anywhere around town and like have like an infinitely better time than standing in a club and watching people sweat all over each other. Like I think like kind of lower comedy shows like that. I don't want to say lower, but like just amateur, I guess. Not even amateur. That's not the right word. Not mainstay people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of the best bang for your buck entertainment that you can find really anywhere.
You really don't like sweat, people.
I'm a sweaty person.
Anyways, how does that work actually? I know that you have background in acting as well, but do you have to have a background in acting to go over there and begin to
No,
to
that's
stage?
the beauty. That's the beauty of theater, sports, or improv. Everybody can do it.
Mhm.
Everybody's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, that's everybody can act. It's just not everybody who does it professionally.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's more difficult.
And they get a lot of business types as well. Sometimes that while here, they'll sometimes go to classes because the skills you learn in improv
Oh,
are
really?
something
Team
you can apply.
building, yeah, it applies to all
everything,
kinds
you know.
of all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
it's,
interesting.
it's great. I really like it. So
Mhm.
So is it every week or and
they have all kinds of stuff. I mean, I was taking. They have what they call a core series, and you do 4 different weekend workshops, and then you can eventually apply to be in their rookie main stage company, which I may do this spring. Audition for it anyways, and then I guess if you go through that, you can audition for the main stage company.
Oh,
and then you're-
nice,
Yeah,
nice.
then you're a pro. But yeah, on a beginning level, anybody can do it. I mean, it's just games.
nice? That's nice.
And then there's techniques for moving the story along and stuff like that. I mean, ideally you want to tell a complete story, but just they're games to play. And I mean, some of it is just freeing up your imagination games and freeing up physically games, and it's all fun. And they have a drop-in every weekend for people who just want to go in and try it. You don't have to.
Oh,
really?
That's so cool.
Oh,
it's like
cool.
I might try. it.
$20 for 3 hours or something.
nice.
On Granville Island anyway.
Yeah, I'd love to try that too.
Yeah, me
Maybe we
too.
should go do it together one day.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Yeah, I always felt like that was like a main key of acting was just kind of not being afraid to look like a fool, you know, and being comfortable with, you know,
Yeah, I'm not
exposing
afraid of looking
yourself.
like a fool.
right? Not exposing yourself physically necessarily, but just exposing, you know, who you are or like some weird idea that you might have or whatever, and just running with it. And
Yeah, I draw the line at exposing myself. But other than that, yeah, ham it up.
Yeah,
Ham it
yeah.
up, I say.
And have you been doing as much as stage as film or?
No, I haven't. I
How's
haven't
that?
done stage in forever. Actually, okay. At this thing, they have what do they call it? It's not the rookie company does shows, but they call it I forget what they call it, but it's like an open mic for improvisers. And I went the last one they had. I went and I got up on stage. It was awesome. It was lots of fun. So that's the first time I've done anything on stage for quite a while. So since I've been in Vancouver, it's all TV and
yeah,
mostly TV.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mostly TV.
JWoww.
Yeah.
Something that I wanted to talk to you about was
Oh.
I don't know the music will come.
There's no tongs for these Timbits, eh? Everyone's just sticking their fingers in there.
I thought this was a
did
professional setting. But I'm sorry, Ken. I'm
Did
gonna have
you-
to
did
take
you want-
Ken home.
I
so
have
guess.
I have surgical gloves. We could use surgical gloves. I have tongs. Do you want some tongs and
No,
a plate?
I'll be okay.
That's the mic test interrupted my thought process, and I don't remember what I was going to ask you. But the mic test is where we go back. We talk about what we were chatting about last week, and see if we had any thoughts on our own opinions and stuff. And actually, I haven't even released the episode from last week, so you haven't been able to hear yourself yet. But we did. It wasn't that long ago. We should be able to remember what we chatted about.
Yeah, we did chat about death penalty.
Yeah.
And also mainly that, right?
Yeah, we talked
penalty
about death penalty and like cults and you know
Cults,
kind
yeah.
of, and we got
It's
into a
kinda
little
like,
bit sort of like cultural appropriation and stuff like, you know, should we be intervening in like, you know, ancient cultures that kind of still exist, you know, jungle tribes and stuff like that maybe practice things that are against what we would think as like a moral,
like cannibalism
and stuff like that, or you know, if we should just be letting them do their thing and that type of deal. So yeah, it was kind of an interesting chat. I don't.
Yeah, we had
kinda covered
different
a lot of
opinions
different
around.
bases, yeah.
Yeah, Lambert had his had his saying, and it's a different opinion than mine. And I think you and Emily were more in between of.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you come away from a conversation about the death penalty is that like there's definitely no easy answer about it, and there's always emotion involved in it. You know, as much as people want to be objective about it, and like my stance on it is, well, I mean, in a civilized society, there shouldn't be state-ordered execution. Again, that said, sometimes people just make your skin crawl and should probably be eradicated.
Yeah, that's what I said. Like, I'm against it, but to be institutionalized. But if something happened to, like, I don't know, someone in my family, like something nasty, and I had the chance to take the guy and a gun, I don't know what I would do. You know.
Yeah.
There's
Even
definitely those
though,
moments, I think, where everyone has wanted to I want to murder someone else, but that's also why we have a government, and that's why we don't leave it up to the decision of one person, because we're a collective, and there shouldn't really be letting one person's whims and emotions be leading to the deaths of other people.
Right.
Especially based on how inefficient the system is in the United States.
How often there's...
And the amount of times that people are found innocent, either after it's happened, or sometimes there was someone recently, I don't remember his name because there's too many of cases like that, but recently there was a man released after, I think it was 53 years. He was wrongfully convicted. He was on death row, kept appealing it, luckily, and then on DNA evidence recently got out. And to rob someone of 53 years for something like that is...
Yeah, it's kind of scary. Over the last few years, it's really been kind of exposed how little or how unreliable stuff that we were really relying on as pretty hard evidence, like DNA and fingerprints and stuff like that, have been proven to be like pretty
imperfect
at best, you know. Like they can tell people's like blood types and stuff like that. And a big issue was the people that testify for these things are just like, you know, Joe Blow from the lab, and they come in and they say, you know, in my expert opinion, this blood matches that blood, or this splatter matches that splatter, or whatever. And by saying in their expert opinion, they absolve themselves of like liable responsibility for saying like this is definitely the case, right? Which it just isn't. So yeah, we got into stuff like that. It's kind of...
I think it's always good to err on the side of humanity instead of jumping to finite decisions like that.
Yeah.
Killing is bad, and to prove that conclusively, I'm gonna kill somebody.
Yeah.
If you don't believe me,
stay away from those Timbits, Boris.
It's a paradox for sure. We also got onto like that brought us to a bit of vigilante justice and kind of like where not necessarily that we we kind of condone it as a society sometimes, you know. Like personally, if you hear of a horrific, like this doesn't actually happen very much, but like you hear of a horrific crime and like I don't know, like the dad like kills the person that raped his daughter or something like that. It's like, you know what? That's kind of a one-off. I don't think that person's a danger to society. They should definitely be punished for what they did, but like you kind of have this sort of, you know, moral gray area where you're like, yeah, those people kind of deserved it though, you know? Which
I think ties into, I've been thinking about this lately, like the concept of toxic masculinity and, you know, kind of how much we've been shaped by the patriarchy and by this incredibly imbalanced system. And I still find myself, even though I like to think I'm, you know, pretty forgiving and against the death penalty and stuff like this, I always question why, when I'm in these moments of anger or whatever, why is my first instinct like we should just end this person? And I think back to what I've grown up on and what we've grown up on with media, and how did pretty much every one of are cartoons. How is the problem solved? The Ninja Turtles, beat the shit out of Shredder, and everybody ate pizza and was happy. So that's kind of what we've been bred to believe.
Yeah, and I posed the
good
question. I was like, do you think that the popularity of superheroes in our media now, superheroes in our media now has would make that maybe make it more acceptable to us if we saw somebody actually like begin like a Punisher type tirade where they're like actually like offing gang members and stuff like that on like in a serial killer headspace. Like
Batman.
I think you would have a more susceptibility for people to rally around somebody like that now maybe than you would have like even 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah. Well, Batman's a very old character, and he's basically just a fascist. He's a rich guy, a billionaire that inherited all his money, and he goes around doling out justice to people that grew up from a very different background as him.
Yeah.
People and explicitly, even in
That's a good point.
even in the Christopher Nolan movies, he explicitly beats the shit out of someone who is mentally ill. The Scarecrow.
Yeah.
The guy is a maniac. Sure, he's also a violent maniac, but that doesn't mean let's let this one billionaire beat the crap out of him. It means let's put him in a place where maybe he can be rehabilitated, or at the very best, he can be kept away from society. But no, he beats the shit out of them, and then they break out.
And a lot of the iconic...
It's an interesting point. I've never
yeah,
thought of that.
but a lot of the iconic versions of those characters and stuff, particularly Batman, go after that. They try to expose that and find that kind of the interesting version of it. But what I'm saying is like, okay, so like, yeah, in the 80s, you had like, a small subset of nerds that were like, yeah, Batman's fucking badass, and like, I want to be like Batman, and like everybody kind of want to be like knew who Batman was, but like now it's like, it's a totally different animal now. Not even just with Batman, but like things like Iron Man and stuff like that. Yeah. Like it's conceivable that it could grow up with the, like aspirations to become an Iron Man like figure and actually like end up doing it. Like you could like feasibly build something like that. Oh yeah. Right? And so we see these types of things happen, and it's like, I don't know, it seems like kind of, science fiction giving us a little bit of a glimpse into the future sometimes. Not with and with that attitude sometimes too, right?
Because the media we consume matters. It affects us, even if it's very subtly, you don't realize, I'm over 30 and I only just now realized, that, hey, maybe the Ninja Turtles were kind of unhealthy.
Or the Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Girls.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, a little bit of a depressing topic from last week, but we're going to get onto something more lighthearted this week, which is global apocalypse.
Oh, wow. That's so light.
Yeah.
Especially with the two people in the world that have the power to the buttons.
Yeah. I would be remiss if I didn't mention at least the Mike Flynn stuff that is related to the Donald Trump thing. Obviously, Mike Flynn is the former head of the NSA, who has now been pled guilty to lying to the FBI about...
He just admitted, right?
Yeah, he pled guilty to lying to the FBI about meetings with Russia involving the Trump campaign.
That Trump stopped tweeting.
Right, which basically
Really?
means like, if I'm reading through a bunch of stuff from like lawyers posting about it and stuff, is like they have him on a bunch of like way harder shit, and they've flipped him to incriminate probably the president and vice president in ties to Russia and stuff like that.
At the very least, his Weasley-looking son. Not to, I don't want to bring
But the
looks
thing
into
is
it.
like,
That kind of lowers the discourse.
What I was reading was the only reason they would target somebody like Flynn is to flip in order to get people that are higher
Bigger than
him in the ranking, which is only 2 people, and maybe the governor or the attorney general, who's kind of on the same sort of legislative level. So, yeah, shit's gonna go down, man. Shit is gonna go down. We've never seen anything like this in our lifetime.
Yeah, but then again, I don't know, man.
Although, Ken, you were around for Watergate, I believe.
Yeah, in a manner of speaking.
Yeah,
I suppose. But we had it with the senators, all the Canadian senators being kicked out of Senate one after another. Pamela Wallin.
That's
and,
true.
And what was the name of the that fellow who went fisticuffs with our boy Trudeau.
Oh yeah, I forget his name now though. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's sad when I can know more American cabinet members
Well, that
and
was
senators than
gonna
I
be
can
my
my own
point, is,
countries.
like,
Yeah,
we can say that, and obviously there's like corruption and shit like that everywhere. But like what's happening in the U.S. is affecting the whole world. Like
Yeah.
we can't pretend like what happens in Canada is going to have any impact on anybody else, really.
Well, I don't know if that's true. 'Cause people are so focused on the United States here. I was just in Denmark, and they're really socially and politically focused,
Yeah.
and they have it's an awesome country, awesome country. But I mean, they're aware of what's going on in the United States, but they're more preoccupied with what's going on in their own backyard.
Yeah. Well, they
I think
focused
we
on
should
what
be
they
that-
can influence
in what
instead
they
of
can do, yeah.
because I think what Donald Trump and all of that
It's a
really
reality
amounts
show.
to up here,
yeah, totally.
except for Matt, you're half American, you're fully American, right?
Well, I was born there.
Born there, so yeah, so you have a little bit more power over the situation. However, but for us, it seems more entertainment. People that are not politically active are constantly talking about it, and that's could be a good thing.
But the
I don't
thing
think it
is like
necessarily is.
what happens in the U.S. is especially financially,
Yep.
is going to have reverberations around the globe. Like because everything is funneled through there. Like particularly this tax plan that they're pushing through now is like basically steal from the poor to give to the rich, like in a way worse manner than has even been done before, which is pretty ridiculous.
It's global now. That's neoliberalism
Yeah, like that-
in action. That's
Yeah.
That
that's
is a
global.
thing that is, when the states do it, then conservatives that live in every other place are like, oh, well, that's something that we can push.
Yep.
Like we see it here now.
Yep.
Even like the ridiculousness of like non-factual based arguments is making it way up here.
Yep.
Into like I follow Alberta politics. I'm from there, and it's the most conservative area of the country. And
Yep.
and there's some idiot came out comparing legalization of marijuana to fentanyl the other day, and I'm like.
Yeah, he
How
he cribbed that from Bill Blair, the old police chief of Toronto,
Yeah.
who once compared it to heroin, and now he is
He's pro legalization now.
not only pro legalization. He's one of the investors in one of the basically monopoly marijuana producers in Ontario.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which I think
Like it's just so hilariously backwards. You see some
infuriating.
of this stuff. It is infuriating.
well to see a man who's been carrying out acting on these laws that have ruined lives of
Wait, though, like you have to give props to people that have in my opinion, the guts to
change position.
change positions.
For
like,
sure.
I think a big problem in what our political landscape is now is that people aren't given the room to be movable. They're called like flip-floppers and stuff like that. And it's like, well, yeah, I flipped my position because I saw something new that changed my mind. Like, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
Just opportunism. I mean,
Yeah.
you become a cop because the pension's good. You don't have to do it for very long,
Yep.
and it's
Yep.
and then when you can make money off marijuana, you make money off marijuana. There.
Yeah, especially when thanks to your position as a police officer, you have made a lot of great connections in the government.
The
that
drugs as
in
well, the drug
Ontario,
industry.
the government will be controlling the sales of it. So and everything. And then
Oh, really?
to become a actual grower and licensed producer, it's essentially they're cutting out an entire middle class of people. It's making it cost prohibitive to open a marijuana business, and they're continuing the human rights violation that I felt the law was in the first place, and they're not
Yeah.
really making it any better with their current law.
Yeah. And just a bunch of nonsense, being spread around. I've seen somebody talk about how, again, like an MP or an MLA in Alberta talking
Yep.
about how kids are gonna be like growing pot in their house and all this stuff. It's like, okay, well, are you concerned about the booze that's in your cabinet? Because it's a lot easier to twist the lid off the booze than it is to cultivate and harvest
Yeah.
multiple large plants in your house without your
Yep.
parents noticing. Like, what are these people? Like, I don't understand. I mean, Ken, maybe you can speak to this a little bit more. Like, I don't understand the fear around it that comes from that generation of people.
Well, I mean, at base, it's got to do with the criminalization of hemp production, right?
Right.
And so that's the petrochemical industry.
Textile industry.
Yeah, because they
true.
wanted the rope making money. It's
Yep.
as simple as that. So we get all of that. Yeah,
It's interesting
And it's
how
tied into racism.
when
and
you
yeah.
go back into history and see how these things kind of like started, things like prohibition and just like how we consume energy and stuff like that, and you see all these little things that happened that like completely changed the course of how we consume things. Even like, yeah, okay, so there's a battle for what is best used for rope, hemp or twine. Like, I don't fucking know, hemp or twine,
nylon.
or nylon. Yeah, nylon,
Yeah.
which is
Hemp is twine.
yeah.
Still.
Okay. So hemp or nylon, which is a petroleum product. All of a sudden, people are like, oh, well, hemp is good, but all this oil money can be made out of the nylon.
Yep.
And so let's lobby that hemp can be illegal because it can be used for this other fun thing, and people have been doing it for a long time, but it hasn't really caused a lot of problems or whatever. But yeah, we'll just make it illegal. And then, like, it's the same thing when energy started, like, oil and solar and all these things were kind of on the same level, and then all of a sudden special interests start to take over and say, like, no, you should just make it impossible for basically these other types of setups to grow, and to have a chance. It's like quashing it before it even becomes a thing.
It's called antitrust.
Yeah, it is, and it's getting worse and worse as all these like media companies conglomerate
And more and more
stuff.
accepted and more sophisticated in how they do
Yeah.
it. There's rules against antitrust, but that doesn't seem to be
It's
stopping.
true. More sophisticated is the point, right? Like, you have all these, like, most people don't even realize that, like, Disney owns pretty much like every piece of entertainment. Like, they're going to buy Fox now, which owns like this and this and this, and there's actually only 2 companies that provide cable to the U.S.
Yep.
There's actually only like 3 media companies in Canada, when they keep like, you get the Kudo ads that say, oh, we have just as much range as the other guys.
Yeah.
Like, you are the fucking other guys, man. Like, TELUS is Kudo. It's just, it's what it is. They're just like repackaging it and telling you that it's cheaper and that they're like better somehow, and like, it's brilliant actually, but it's
in a
soul
devious,
sucking.
evil
Soul-sucking
way.
for sure. And speaking of people that are doing no good things for our society, I have this book, JWoww, that
Why are
sits
you
beside
looking
my
at me?
toilet, and it's called "Everything is Going to Kill Everybody." The terrifying real ways the world wants you dead, and it's by a man called Robert Brockway. And there's a lot of scenarios in here of things, well, a few things that have already happened, but some things that could potentially happen to wipe us off the face of the earth.
Oh, nice. The good ideas.
Yeah. There's a near miss. I don't have the right page, so I'm just going to talk off the cuff.
Bookmarks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this was a very off the cuff sort of slackline. Anyways, in the height of the Cold War, there was a launch that happened that the Soviet system detected. They detected a launch over one of their major cities, and the general in charge of the retaliation, for some reason, just had a gut feeling that it was a false alarm, that there wasn't actually a nuke about to hit Russia, and like disobeyed all orders and everything to not hit the button that would have ended up nuking a U.S. city, and it ended up being a false alarm. And so, like, just this one guy's gut feeling prevented like thermonuclear global devastation. Like, stuff like that kind of throws me for a loop sometimes when you think about how close we can actually be to one accident resulting in a virus breakout or in thermonuclear war.
An
or
asteroid miss.
Well, that type of thing is like, what the fuck are you gonna do about it?
Well, there are ways to. There
Yeah.
could be something we're doing. It's not our most immediate threat, and I don't know if we'll be lucky to last as a civilization long enough to even see an asteroid hit us. But NASA has been a big proponent of that. They can possibly. It would only take a small interception, kind of. You can, if you go out far enough, if you detect it early enough, there's actually a way to deflect it enough that by the time it makes its way to Earth, it might miss it. But
And we're actually due for one, man. I took an astronomy course in university, and there's like a chart of like asteroid hits throughout all of Earth's history.
Yep.
and every about 100 million years they get a global devastator, and the last one was 65 million years ago.
Yep.
So yeah, plus minus 40 million years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, something could hit.
Big earthquake in Bali.
Big earthquake. Yep.
Earthquake.
That's a big.
In Vancouver.
Yep. The ring. Was it the Pacific? What's it called again?
The San
ring under
Andreas
Vancouver.
Fault, I think, is our.
There's the San Andreas Fault, and then I think there's the
There's a ring
Pacific Rim.
There's a
I think it's Pacific Rim. Yeah.
Well, there's also Vancouver Island resettling. It's like it's tilted like 3 degrees. I mean, it's a big island, right? It's tilted. It's 3 degrees off where it should be sitting. So
Yeah.
it resettles apparently every.
Wow.
And that'll be a tsunami.
Yeah.
Oh, what is it too? The volcano in the U.S.
Oh, in Yellowstone.
Yeah, Yellowstone.
Yellowstone. Yeah.
That thing is like its base
Mm-hmm.
is underneath like a third of the United States. Like if it blows, even though some lava flow could reach into like
Mm-hmm.
Calgary type area and stuff like that. Like,
And then there's
it's
the problem
fucking
with-
insane.
Yep.
I get it, but I with all those theories, I guess the one that is more probable it will be the wrong tweet.
Yeah.
Like we've been like pretty close, I guess.
Yeah.
To
I think there's a lot of man-made, and I think it's Trump isn't the only one who might end up getting us killed.
oh, we have
It's-
crazy guys all around.
Yeah,
now,
the blame we've got enough blame to go around
Oh,
for
yeah.
than just Trump. Trump is
Yeah.
sensationalized, and for sure he's a unprecedented monster, especially in how
He's
stupid
representative of a lot of
he is. He's bringing to
Trump-like people.
and as he's bringing to light, he's shining light on a lot of areas, and I think people in Canada are now maybe, hopefully, waking up a little bit that we like to kind of laugh at our neighbors down there that they're dealing with Trump, but there's a lot of us in Canada that know Trump supporters that are Canadian, and that should be act as a bit of a kind of a litmus test for us to see that it's possible we can end up just where they're at. You know, we might have someone waiting in the wings of one of our parties, you know, waiting to kind of do what he's doing.
Yeah.
Don't we?
Well,
I think we do already.
I think we do. I know we have, and a lot of people
We've
aren't
got
aware, but we have
the
a lot
Alberta conservative, Jason Kenney. He's definitely
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And who was the woman who was vying for the conservative
Conservative Party?
leadership? Wasn't she also one of
She was
them
pretty populist
people?
and pretty
out there?
yeah, and it's scary because the ones that the Trumps that we get tend to be a little more competent and a little more palatable to everyone.
There will be the worst apocalypse we could ever have. It's to have one Trump ruling every country in the world. That would be the
Mhm.
worst apocalypse.
And I think the best, honestly, I think this whole idea of nuclear threat, that would be probably one of the more comfortable ways I think that we can go. I think the more likely scenario is that we're going to see our resources and our basic needs like housing and clean air and clean water, we're going to see them slowly erode, and we're going to eventually end up in closer to a George Orwell's, you know, totalitarian society. I think it's going to be a long, slow
oh, you think
death
so?
instead of.
That's terrible.
I think an asteroid would be pretty honorable. I'll take
I'll
take how the if
Get
the
get
dinosaurs.
the best view.
It took out the dinosaurs. That's good enough for me.
Yeah, respect, right?
But we've seen a bunch of those films, and I know that the idea is a little bit terrifying, but I'm also so attracted to the those films, you know, that talk about for some reason apocalypse. There's one in particular, Children of Man. It's kind of like in
Alfonso Cuarón, yeah.
in kind of like apocalyptical situation where people cannot have kids anymore, and they are trying. There's one that actually can. What are your? Do you guys like even like the apocalypse films? And if you do, like, what's the idea that it's more?
I think science fiction is the fables
Yep.
of our time. I mean, it's talking about what is, but in a way that people will get it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
No, it's true.
And
George Orwell. Mentioning George Orwell, he just
Mhm.
I think he could just see the writing on the wall. I mean, it's not
Yep.
like he was predicting the future. He just
No, he
said,
was living
This
through
is
it.
how it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
what's the idea that you think that's gonna be that's more close to what it could be?
They say that by 2040, those people, the people
Yeah,
that say
yeah,
those
yeah.
things,
The them,
they say
yeah,
by
yeah.
2040 the oceans will be at a point where all the major species will be dead, and when the fish are all gone, the people are gonna be not far behind. I mean,
Yeah, the acidification of the ocean. Yeah, it's
yeah.
rising really rapidly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
And
all
there's-
these little things happening that we're just kind of blissfully ignoring, you know? The big things like thermonuclear war and stuff are things that we can like see happening and be like, oh
Make a
yeah,
movie
that's a
about
scary
It's more
thing.
cinematic,
Make a
you're
movie
thinking.
about it, yeah. Or even an asteroid, tidal waves and stuff like that. But yeah, things like the ice caps are slowly melting, which will result in like massive damage to basic infrastructure, which will result in massive deaths of people and massive homelessness and that type of thing. Like people don't really like think about the compounding effects of this type of stuff.
No. And the ripple effect, how each of these areas affects other areas. So
Yeah, and
an
with that
asteroid
in
hitting
mind-
and floods. Yep.
With that in mind, another near miss from not that long ago, and this will please the anti-GMO crowd. There's a normal bacterium in plants called K. planticola, and it results in the benign layer of slime on the living root systems. And it exists in every species of plant life, every species, every variety. What bioscientists thought is, what if we could use this plant, because it's like just waste, what if we could use this plant waste as fertilizer? And yeah, what if we could use it as biofuel? And yeah, what if we could use it as like alcohol to drink? And so they thought it was like this miracle thing. And so they started putting it or genetically modifying this K. planticola so that it produced alcohol in the slime with levels as high as 17 parts per million. And anything beyond 1 or 2 parts of alcohol per million is lethal to all known plant life. Okay. And so it wouldn't kill the life that it's on, but if it leaks out into the soil, it kills other types of plant life.
Oh, wow.
Okay? And so for some reason, they deemed it safe to put in dirt. And this was happening, like they were starting to put it into seeds and that type of thing until a group, where were they out of? A group out of Oregon State University, Dr. Elaine Ingham, a professor, Oregon State University, and possibly the savior of all mankind, as this book puts it, did a sample where there was a group completely absent of the K. planticola, a group with normal K. planticola present, and a group with the modified K. planticola in it. And they planted them all, like just in adjacent fields to each other. And within a week, all of the samples were dead. And so the implication is that if released from the lab, which I cannot stress enough was very nearly was, the modified K. planticola would have spread worldwide in a matter of months, killing all plants it touched within a week, and turning all soil-based plant life into sweet, sweet liquor. Like a twisted hillbilly fantasy, the world really, very nearly drowned in moonshine.
Wow.
Like, that's fucking close, man. That's one altruistic scientist at a university being like, wait a second, and spending a little bit of time to look into it, and then probably spending the rest of her life fighting for and against very powerful forces for the removal of this type of stuff. Like it's crazy to think how blind we are to something so simple that people will just be like, people that don't understand it, that are making the choices about whether or not this happens, can be easily manipulated into thinking that this person is not telling them the truth because they don't understand which one's right by looking at the actual data,
Which is a failing of the education system. And
Yeah. Well, and a failing of a political system too, and what we
Yep.
look for in people that we want to be, that we want to vote
Representing
for.
us,
Yeah.
yeah.
Even our own country, which is one of the more socialist countries in the world, you have a bunch of people that just during an election spout out a bunch of non-factual based stuff to try and get themselves electable on all sides of the equation.
Yep.
And I mean, some of it leans a little bit heavier one way, but like, it just polarizes everybody into their stances, you know.
Yeah.
And then you can so easily agree with somebody who can just dismiss what is factual information because, well, this YouTube commenter says that this conspiracy theory resulted in this and this and this, you know. Yeah, it's kind of freaky how close we get to that type of stuff.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's there's been a massive shift in the way people act and think, and it's.
I think so too, man. And it oh man, it really it makes me hopeful, but also like yeah, just kind of curious how things will go down. Like I look at something like, well, what's happening with Trump, and so much has happened that he has said and done that in any other political climate in the U.S. would have been deemed like impeachable or unelectable, and for some reason it's fine now. Like even the implication of talking to Russians during your campaign in the 80s, would like no shot. Like you might have been killed.
Yep.
You know, and so I kind of forgot what my train of thought was.
Yeah.
Because
we're living in this post-fact world. This fake news, as people say.
Yeah.
They're kind of actually, I think, onto something. It's not to give them any ammo at all and any idea that they're right, but there actually is a lot of fake news out there. We have media.
There is. They're just pointing to the wrong fake news.
Yeah, but even to an extent, I think the left, which I consider myself firmly a part of, and even a bit more distantly to my right, I find
You're
the
on
left.
the left side of the sofa, even.
Yeah,
That's
that's how left I am. Yeah,
That depends
Well,
on your perspective.
It's true. For me, he's on the right side.
Well, the long way around.
but yeah, I think it's interesting talking about the Russia thing and the Trump thing as well. Like it is definitely a massive, massive deal. What seems to be lost in the conversation is that the United States is the people. They created the apparatuses, the apparati. I don't know what the plural of apparatus is.
Apparati.
Do we know Greek?
Apparati.
Apparatus. So the
It's
but yeah, these apparatuses they created
Yeah.
are the ones that are taking them down. It's their social media. It's their this epidemic of narcissism. It's
Even the whole way their political system is built, like I think we talked about it a couple of times, but like if they had a parliamentary system where more than two parties were available to really be a thing,
to speak. Yeah.
and they had a third party either to the left of the Democrats or to the right of the Republicans, somebody like Trump would never have been president. He would have been the leader of a party with like maybe 20% of the seats or something like that.
You would.
Because a lot of the people end up caught in the middle between two people they don't want to vote for and end up voting for one side or the other with their nose plugged or whatever and not given any choice.
Oh, we're not like that in Canada.
Well, we are for sure. But the thing is like, if there's a party that you hate so viscerally that you like won't vote for them regardless, like for instance, the NDP in Alberta for a long time was like a non-thing. Like nobody even talked about it. And people started to get sick of the seat of the conservatives there because they'd been there for 40 years. They racked up a bunch of debt and all this stuff, and they just there was a bunch of corruption and bullshit that was happening. And so the whole thing was like, well, we got to get the conservatives out. And so there were other like their votes end up getting split between Alberta Party, NDP, and like progressive conservative parties and stuff like that. And you end up with kind of a more even though there are people that are still polarized, like I'm personally polarized even between things that are between, you know, the left and the left parties, you know? And so I have the choice between NDP or liberal, you know, versus they don't have a choice between Democrat and or Bernie Sanders. They can't choose that.
If they had that, Bernie Sanders would have actually probably been in the running.
He probably would have had a similar situation of Trump as being the leader of a socialist party that is, you know, got like a third of the seats or something like that, or 25% of it or something.
And he would have won.
Yeah, or, yeah, he maybe would have won. He
I
probably
like to say that under my breath because
fucking
not
Elizabeth
very,
Warren should have ran. She would have won.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyways. anyways, I digress about that. Maybe we should take a break, and we'll come back after
All right.
a few minutes.
I'm gonna call you out, 'cause you ain't what you claim to be. Say you're a working man, but you ain't got no grit, you got no glory. What kind of man are you? Say you're noble, but you're just a goddamn fool. Go, go on, yeah, go, you know, yeah, you better run, or you're staring down the barrel of my shotgun. Yeah, my shotgun. I'm gonna call you out, 'cause you ain't what you claim to be. Steal from the people of this land. The time is done for being sorry. I swear you're better off dead. I'm coming for you, and the bounty on your head. Go, go on, yeah, go, you know. Yeah, you better run, or you're staring down the barrel of my shotgun. Yeah, my shotgun.
No, it's okay. It looks like we created a political system all around, and an economy that is actually killing us as a species. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
It's true.
I find it pretty. I don't know why we see this, but we don't actually do anything about it. You know, people saying that there's no global warming or all that kind of stuff, and the world just going to shit, and we are just seeing it and not doing anything. And I keep thinking, like, what if we could see ourselves from outer space? Actually, you know, maybe as another species, and just actually looking at us and like, what the hell are they doing?
Yeah.
You know, like, that doesn't make any sense. And they call themselves rational people.
They're fighting over
And-
this thing that they made up.
Like, if you think about, not even the dinosaurs were so stupid, because they didn't destroy the, like, they didn't
lasted a few million years.
Sorry to express, but they didn't shit in the place that they ate. You know, I mean, and that's what we are doing.
Well,
we are like
Whoa.
slowly.
The thing is like
You
we
know?
notice it. Everybody you talk to, we all talk about it, and everybody notices it. But the people that actually have the power to make choices that affect these things are not making them on behalf of us. They're making them on behalf of the people that are giving them the most money to do it. And so, like, a perfect example is happening right now. The tax plan in the U.S. is going through with only 25 to 30% of the actual population of the United States approving it.
Yeah.
Yet 60% of the senators are
Mhm.
going to let it go through because it's a huge tax break for Wall Street and for basically anybody making over like $100,000 a year. And so all of those
So
people
every
have just like
politician.
pool their fucking power together and be like, yeah, no, put it through because we want our money and we want our money.
Well-
And in the meantime, we all know that there are problems that need to be fixed, and we yell about them and we fight for them, and they say that they're part of their platforms, and then just nothing ever happens. With
I don't
it.
think enough of us yell and
No, I don't
fight,
think
and
so
I'm
either.
very, very guilty of it. I was talking
Yeah.
about it with Ken in the car. Writing letters matters.
Yeah.
Signing change.org petitions does not.
Yeah.
You need to write letters. These people's information, their addresses and phone numbers are publicly available. I've only written a letter twice, I think, in my adult life, which is pretty, in my opinion, despicable considering how the proportion how much I've complained versus how much I've actually done stuff
Yeah.
is pretty imbalanced.
These people are paid full time to be doing what we don't want them
And
to do,
handsomely.
and
Yep.
we have to work really hard, and then in our spare time,
Yep.
be writing letters to them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, I
like-
understand the yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And also the education system. I mean, we're not really educated so much as indoctrinated,
Yeah.
so that we believe in one thing or another. I mean, the idea of Canada itself, you know,
Yeah.
or any country. I mean, what does it really mean? We
That's-
can all say we're the best, and we
Yeah.
can all say
Yep.
it's the most beautiful place, and but it's all we know.
It's just these arbitrary
all we know.
lines.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. And
The
just
world's a beautiful place, isn't it?
just coming back, just coming back from what you're saying. Like, I was reading like this research a while ago about psychiatrists talking about the astronauts, and when they go out, they see the world so differently than when they come back. A lot of them they can't
Totally
be in society anymore.
a humbling.
I've taken that trip and never left a farm.
It's called LSD.
Psilocybin mushrooms.
Yeah.
But
No, it's true, man. Like you said, you take a look at it from a higher perspective, and you start to wonder like what's the point of fighting about this stuff, you know? And even the idea of, well, we've created this political and economic system that's just the way it is. It's like we consider it a part of like natural law, and it's not. It's just how we decided a while ago to associate with each other, and it's kind of grown into this like out of control mechanism. And we act like we can't just like, hey, maybe we should try something different. Maybe
Yeah.
we should restart. Maybe the idea of like money is not really what we should be thinking about. But like we're so ingrained with an evolutionary advantage of greed that kind of no matter what you come up with, there will always be a fight for it.
yeah, and it looks a little bit like a hippie talk, but it actually is not, man. Because think about it, how arbitrary it was for like all the countries in Africa were divided by
Yeah.
people that were not Africans.
Yeah, man.
You know, all the Middle East, they created states
If you
that
look
they
at-
actually didn't exist, and they want people not to fight over.
Yeah.
You know, people that were living there for 5,000 years.
Mhm.
or
If you look
more.
at maps of those places, like particularly the Middle East, and look at them by like religious association, you see all of these like pockets with little outliers and stuff like that, but pockets of where these people live. They are like, you know, it seems like they probably could have just been figuring it out on their own.
yeah.
But like the problem is that this shit happened, right? Like 60 years ago or whatever, these lines were drawn, and it caused these problems. Not that there weren't problems there before the lines, but like, I mean, the prevailing idea is like, yeah, well, people should, like, you're not going to be able to figure it out for them as an outsider. They're going to have to figure it out themselves, right? But there's so many forces that have been outsiders that nobody really knows what like an outsider is anymore.
Okay, so imagine
And
that.
we can't even have that sort. One second, we can't even have that sort of mindset. I don't think, because at the same time, while we don't want to be, pushing cultural values on people and stuff like that, we do have to come to a consensus on morality, and as we globalize, we have to be one thing.
But man, but look at that. Why will prevail? It's the probably the main thought, like the white people. Like what I'm trying to say, like, what if another species were looking at us and seeing us like killing each other, and they're like, oh, we have to fix this mess. So they just come here and like kill a bunch of us and try to
Wait, though, hold on. They could come here and with a thing that said, like, hey, look, like, we're from this place and we don't regard money in this way, and we share our resources, and you know, we've created this, I don't know, special element that helps, that is fucking, you know, everlasting energy. It would still be up to the people on Earth whether or not they wanted to fight over that shit, or whether or not they wanted to fight these aliens, or like, it's not necessarily up to the quote unquote invader to come in and yeah, although historical context will tell us otherwise. Like, I just heard a thing, like 2/3 of the native population ends up being eradicated on average in like any scenario where these things come into contact. But it's also inevitable, right?
Which
Like,
part's inevitable?
coming into contact with other cultures and other people. And now to the point of globalization that we can connect instantly with anybody anywhere. It's not physically happening because we're not on a boat landing in a different place, but it's happening in our psyche and socially, because we're seeing atrocities happen around the world. Atrocities happen within our own country that we didn't even think were a thing before, right?
Yeah, but we keep imposing. But
what do you do when things are happening that are not
imposing that? Like, if you look back to the problems of the Middle East, it started with one thing being imposed, and then two, and then three, and then four, and then like people from outside making decisions that would affect countries that didn't have.
ISIS exists mainly because of interventionism. It's but that's another argument there, because I don't think the people that created that even really necessarily thought there was some kind of massive atrocity there.
Well, there could be the argument too that something like ISIS would have still existed regardless, but would have not been concerned with attacking a Western world as much as they were with attacking their own.
Yeah.
Right? Because like something like ISIS is, yes, born out of like imperialism and stuff, but it's also born out of a cultural fight where these people that believe in these ancient and archaic things see the rest of the world moving on from that stuff, but they want it to keep it around because it's part of how they've grown up. It's part of their power structure, especially like men who have had subservient women their whole lives and have had access to all that type of stuff. You know, eventually, even if they were allowed, even if they were allowed to grow on their own without outside intervention, there would inevitably be like a social order swap, or an uprising, if you will, of progressivism and human rights and people trying to fight for themselves, because eventually people just get smarter and smarter and realize they're being taken advantage of. And that's taken time in different places because of how information gets accessed and stuff like that. But I do think it's an inevitability. Like it hasn't even happened everywhere yet.
No, that's true.
But these guys are happening. They're taking advantage of instability.
Yep.
To seize power, because a lot of the leaders of these things aren't from the countries they're fighting in. I mean, a lot of them were soldiers, Georgian soldiers, and it's like Blackwater in the United States. They're basically mercenaries.
Right.
They're there for the money, right? And
I think they've rebranded since then. There's something a little more friendly
than Blackwater.
Yeah, I don't. Blackwater was a little ominous sounding.
White milk,
whole milk, skim milk,
skim milk,
homogenized
skim milk.
Yeah.
It's delicious and healthy.
Gluten-free milk.
You know, I mean, we talk a lot about politics and stuff like that on here. I want to consider the alien perspective for a second. Like, what do you guys think about? Like,
Jordan and I are the only non-aliens here.
Yeah. if
I
aliens,
hardly believe that.
if aliens were coming here and they were observing us, well, first of all, do either of you gentlemen believe that they have and do?
I don't believe. I definitely don't believe that the people that have been abducted were abducted, but I think they exist. They absolutely definitely exist.
That's not my question.
Yeah.
My question
Sorry.
is if have they visited
I don't think they've
here?
ever been here yet because of the age of the universe and the size of the universe. There's no way that they could have actually been here in our lifetimes unless they've somehow found
That-
wormhole technology.
You qualified it again by saying
Sorry.
in our lifetimes. What fucking
I don't think
in like yours and my lifetime.
I don't
or
think
it's
there has ever
human
been
civilization?
intelligent life on this planet.
Period.
Period.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Present company accepted.
Yeah, a few of you guys are alright.
Ken,
Yeah, I don't really think I need to believe in anything.
fair enough.
'cause, I mean,
Shit's just happening.
They probably don't really
yeah,
care
well,
about us.
What's apparent is apparent, and anything that isn't apparent doesn't really require.
You thinking about it too much?
Mm-hmm.
No,
Yeah.
well, belief. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
I greater minds than my own seem to feel that there's the possibility of other life
Yeah.
elsewhere in the universe.
Yep.
Whether it's superior intelligence, whether it's capable of traveling like we do in between planets or stars or whatever. I don't know. I'd like to see it if it did.
Yeah, if they were to visit,
Good.
What
good
do you
subject
think?
Material for movie making.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's lots of it, right?
Yeah.
What if they were to visit?
I'd warn them.
What kind of form do you guys think that they would take, or did take, or have taken? Because we tend to associate, like, our films tend to associate life as if, well, life grew here like this, and so even if it was a different planet or whatever, it kind of might be somewhere along the same. Like, it would be a humanoid species with
I
Yeah.
hope
Puppets, huge puppets.
huge puppets.
That would be a terrifying
Jim
world.
Henson puppets. That'd be
If there's a Jim Henson planet out there,
or,
I'm moving.
Jay,
like,
wow.
like 2D cartoonish South Park planet.
Oh,
Well,
And
Flat world?
Well, if they do exist, I just hope they are like better than us, because
Mm-hmm.
if it was us traveling to other planets with people that had, I don't know, less IQ or whatever, I'm pretty sure we would be doing the same things that we did with the native people from this world, you know.
But we came from chimps.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they would
Yeah.
come from
Something else,
some
yeah.
Like Panther?
Evolve
hummingbirds-
from- that'd be cool.
hummingbirds or something. They'd be
Interesting.
very territorial,
Yeah.
but they'd only drink nectar.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought. I never really thought about how if a different species evolved as the optimal one, how they would be totally different from us socially.
Like dolphins.
Primatologists, there were several. Of course, I can't substantiate this
Mhm.
instantly, but other people, greater minds than mine, can check it out. But primatologists said Trump had the bearing of a chimpanzee. He did all like his campaign. It was all bluster and challenges and
Pounding his chest.
pounding his chest. Yeah, he behaved
Yep.
like a chimpanzee wanting dominance, and
Yeah.
of course getting like anxious support from other people when he needed it. You know, like
That are kind of afraid and confused by him. And
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
What is
yeah.
that? What's that thing? Like, why is it screaming at me? I guess like I'll follow it because I don't want it to hurt me. I don't know.
yeah.
Oh, really? Who's the chimpanzee from 2001? The one
What
that
if-
grabbed the bone.
Yeah.
What if it was like a penguin type culture that is really built around like monogamy and social structure and like helping each other out basically.
Like
I think the penguins
Mormons?
actually are running the banking system in Canada. I think those are one of the major banks. They're all penguins.
That's a
That's
hot.
why my debit transfer didn't go through. Fucking penguins.
That was a good scoop.
Yeah.
Ken just broke that story.
Yeah.
The story brought to you by Penguin Bank.
Oh.
I think it was
freeze your
Stephen.
accounts.
Freeze your account.
Boo, boo.
Yeah, they won't create a lot of flap either.
I think it was Stephen Hawking that was saying, and I think he was subsequently kind of laughed at by the scientific community, how doom and gloomy he was, but that if aliens ever do make contact, they're probably not here for a good reason. And I think the argument for that is that they're not going to be here for our resources, because if they need water, there's an entire moon made of water surrounding Jupiter right now. If they need basically any element on this planet, resource on this planet, the only thing unique to our planet that we know of is us. So if they're coming here, it's either going to be to control us. They're going to take our jabs. Yeah, they took our jabs. So yeah, they'll either. But yeah, kind of. Yeah.
What if they were like intergalactic refugees?
Oh yeah, like in District 9. Yeah,
they just get caught there.
Yeah,
and they're like, "What the fuck?"
That would probably be the least divisive refugee crisis in the world. I feel like the whole world would kind of agree on that.
In which way?
That
take them the fuck out.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people are very friendly to the idea of terrestrial refugees. So I'm not too confident that a completely alien species, like in North America and Canada, we have trouble. Like, we're scared of people that are bilingual practically. Like, sure, we've got Quebec tucked away up there, but we don't actually have many bilingual.
But that's different than like a curiosity of a different species. Like, it's like,
yeah, there would be a.
I don't know, man. We are in a time that maybe if they all look like Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, people would like actually take them in. You know, like they just
good looking hot aliens.
Yeah,
show up.
hot aliens. Like wow, look at that. I don't know. We are in.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of science fiction surrounding that too, where aliens come in and disguise themselves as hot women to interbreed with people. And maybe that would be like one of the only reasons to come here is to create some sort of weird cross species.
I hope it's Day of the Triffids style, where it's just like walking. I think it's lilies. I think some alien spore comes down from space and possesses plants, and then the plants start walking and kill everyone. It's called the Day of the Triffids.
Oh,
that's beautiful.
Highly recommended.
What year is that?
70s maybe.
Okay.
Back in those weird days.
I mean, like, I think it would have to do a lot with. I mean, we think about how people would have to travel in order to or people think something would have to travel in order to reach us from a different habitable planet. I mean, like, even the idea of a habitable planet is like we base it on our own thoughts on what habituality is. Habitability is. But it could be like a completely different molecular based type of life form.
Oh yeah.
Or like a different dimensional life form, like something that like you mentioned the 2D world or whatever. Like, it could be that, but just like the other side of the spectrum of like this dimension that we can't see or perceive, and these things can just kind of float in and out of it. Like, we call them ghosts, but they're actually like interdimensional beings or something. Like, I don't fucking know.
Chest-sitting hags?
the
chest-sitting
hags.
What
was that?
Yeah.
The old hag? No, that sounds terrible. What was her name?
Yeah, no, you have to explain that.
Yeah.
The night hag.
The
The night hag. We were talking earlier, yeah.
And what's the night hag?
So the night hag is a folklore, I want to say, from...
Sounds Norse.
It sounds Norse. It might be. It's definitely from somewhere in Europe. German, Welsh, I don't know. All alien to me. And it's folklore about a old hag, I guess, for lack of a better word. I guess that's the only word.
That actually is gonna be a whole nother podcast. Sorry,
we'll have a hag podcast. We'll talk about various hags. But the night hag, she flies in the window and then sits on the chest of a person, making it difficult to breathe, and I guess just looking creepy. And then there's some belief that it's actually. Well, there's actual good evidence that it's actually a result of sleep paralysis, where you can't move when you wake up, and you'll sometimes have visions, and it feels like your chest is tight.
Oh, I had that once.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's very common. There's a really...
Yeah, man.
Because we talked about this with Alexis the other day.
It was crazy, man. I thought about possession, like a demon possession. And yeah, I opened my eyes and I couldn't. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
And that was so creepy, man.
Yeah, man.
I never had that. And it happened here, like actually, like a month and a half ago. And I was like, I couldn't do anything. I was like, wow, that's so creepy. It was really creepy.
It's something a lot of
Aliens.
people attribute
Yeah.
alien abductions to. I had something. I talked about it a couple weeks ago. But I'll tell you guys about it. I had when I was about 15, my room, my bed, if you weren't facing the wall, you were facing like the closet. And I had this open closet, and I could just see the shadows. And I don't know if you've ever seen White Noise, but it's this movie where these three figures kind of travel through like the static of radios and TVs and stuff like that. And they're like these three sort of shadows that float around.
No, it hasn't.
And I had seen this movie like a few days before or the night before. And I was sleeping, and I roll over my bed, and my eyes open, and I look directly into my closet, and I can see the three figures in my
Jesus
closet.
Christ.
And I distinctly remember, like, my reaction was so laissez-faire about it. It was just kind of like, huh. And then I flipped over, and I pulled my sheets over my head, and I swear to God, I felt something physically grab my shoulder and start shaking me back and forth.
Jesus Christ.
To the point that I started like screaming, and my dad, who's in the room next to me, comes like busting into my room like, "Are you okay? Like, what's going on here?" I was just like, "Oh, I was having like a crazy nightmare," but it like I couldn't tell reality from a dream.
Ooh.
It literally felt like somebody was like I could feel the grip on my shoulder.
Oh man, that's creepy.
Oh fuck! It scared me, man.
Yeah.
Now I want some mushrooms.
Like champignon or
Actually,
Shiitake.
Shiitake.
Shiitake is preferably.
okay.
Oyster mushrooms are really good as well.
Nice.
Is it oyster? I think.
Yeah. We should make a podcast just about shiitake.
I was thinking we should do a podcast about psychedelics one day.
Yeah.
I tried some LSD not long ago, and it was a lot of fun. And I told the story about it, but it got erased in our lost episode. So I would like to.
It
to
was
go through it
there.
again. Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pick up another copy of that book I was telling you about, Hallucinations by Oliver Sacks,
Okay.
because that's the one that talks about each chapter is on a different type of hallucination. So it has the obligatory acid and mushrooms chapter, but then it goes into the more unknown things like the night hag, so sleep paralysis, and how it's surprisingly really common. A lot of people suffer from sleep paralysis and don't know it, so they go out and they tell stories about aliens and night hags, and people eventually believe it when it happens to them.
Yeah.
But really good book.
Interesting. There was a documentary on Netflix. I don't know if it's there anymore. It might have been when I had US Netflix, and it was called Neurons to Nirvana, and it was all about how drugs affect the brain, how different drugs actually affect the brain, and it was super interesting. It got into psychedelics, LSD, mushrooms. It went into weed, alcohol, nicotine, all that type of stuff. It was really, really interesting. I recommend checking that out. Neurons to Nirvana.
There's a guy that made an interesting. I read some of his stuff, but he actually has several books written called Carlos Castaneda. I don't know if you guys. Yeah.
I don't speak Spanish.
Have you ever read anything?
You know I don't speak Spanish.
I don't know, but it might be something good to check it out. Actually, have you ever read anything about?
My nephew is what is the word? It starts with the letter A. He's an
Academic.
No, not an academic. He's really into it. He reads all the books and he follows it. He's Nagual.
An
or
aficionado.
Aficionado. That's nice. That's nice.
He knows a lot of words.
Let's all list an A word.
I know all
A.
the good
Let's
words.
all list an A word.
I have the best words.
Aardvark.
Ooh, it's 2 A's.
Yeah,
It's 3 A's.
Yeah. So he's turned me on to some of that. I read some of it a long time ago. But
Yeah, there's a lot of crazy shit that goes on in our world, man. A lot of stuff like that really can't be explained. And I mean, Alexis and I, again, we talked about different energy levels and stuff like that. And she was we got into the sleep paralysis stuff. And she was telling me about how her friend used to have like kind of crazy like night terrors and stuff like that, and how she would always have a nightmare kind of the same night without really realizing it.
Oh wow.
And I thought about it, I was like, I think we're kind of at a point where these old sort of pseudosciences and stuff that we're kind of discovering as we go along are sort of not mixing, but like maybe making sense. Like, okay, so
Like
somebody would have
science-wise?
called that sort of like a crazy sort of notion
Okay.
before, but I think about it like, well, you have this roommate who's sleeping 15 feet from you, and they're having like a terror attack while they're sleeping. Their like heart rate is elevated, their temperature's up, they're sweating, maybe they're screaming and you don't even like hear it, right? But you're still like hearing it and your brain's processing it and your body is feeling these, because we know that we give off different radiations and stuff like that, right? So your body is feeling these different energy levels coming from somebody else, and like I have to think that it's impossible that doesn't affect you in some way.
I think so. I wouldn't even call it energy levels. I think that's just the body. When we're asleep, the body is still awake, and if your roommate sleeping across from you is tossing and turning and sweating and breathing quickly, I think your body probably picks up on it.
Well, it is different energy. There's
If-
radiation.
yeah, for sure.
Vibration in the air.
I just
and
meant
that
more
type
in
of
like
stuff.
the chakra or a
Yeah,
sense. I don't
right,
really
right.
agree with, but like if they
But
were
that's what I'm saying is like, well,
if they were across the
don't call
country,
it a chakra then. Call it energy. Call it radiation.
Mm-hmm.
Call it UV or
Yeah.
whatever it is. You know, we have these. Okay, so something I've been thinking about too, and I want to get an astrophysicist on to talk about it, has been gravity waves. So we've just discovered that that gravity is a wave that's like flowing through a universe, and everything is basically kind of on this like sheet, more or less. And as the bigger things move, they have like a bigger pull, obviously, towards them, right? And so when I think about that, and I think about old stories of like, ooh, the planets aligning and people feeling weird and all this stuff, I'm like, well, then doesn't that make sense? That if all the planets were in a row and they're all like all of these waves are hitting each other, like we see water crash and hit each other and stuff like that, doesn't it make sense that it would have some effect on wherever that is the crescent point is happening?
Well, yeah, the moon and the tides, the
Right.
moon and
Yeah.
women's menstrual cycle, the
Yep.
moon and our red blood cells changing.
Like
every
we-
28 days.
we're all-
Every 28 days.
Yeah.
We're all okay with the idea or the fact that the moon physically pulls on the earth and creates the tides in our oceans, but we're not okay with the fact that the moon is physically pulling on the liquid in our bodies and just giving us different feelings and stuff when it's closer, further away from us. That to me only makes scientific sense.
Sure, and we need the sun, right? The sun
Yeah.
sun gives us vitamin D and
Yeah.
warmth.
I didn't do well in science in high school, but I did subscribe to a science magazine for a few years. So if you need
It
an
is- it is
astrophysicist, I
something-
could read a few old copies. And
It is
Maybe-
something
maybe
that
the
I want to get
aliens
somebody on to talk
are
about.
those planets, and they're affecting us, and they've been affecting us all this
Wow.
time.
Ooh.
Responsible for our evolution.
Deep.
But
Ken,
if they
we'll-
ever come to visit us,
I like that.
They would,
boom,
Well,
they would destroy
we're
us.
toast.
They go for a hug.
Maybe that's what
Literally.
happened to the dinosaurs. Like the
planets
aliens
just wanted a hug.
came to,
Yeah.
to say hello.
But they ended up crashing into the earth.
And then they
I
we
think,
miscalculated.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
That's probably a better topic for maybe a further podcast. I do want to get somebody in here that has a scientific background to actually like discuss and chat about that, because it is something that makes me sit here and like think about. It just makes sense to me.
And it's humbling, like Jamal was saying, when astronauts go to space and they look down at the planet, they come back and they see us having our petty squabbles. When I was subscribing to that magazine, it was like every issue was just like, holy shit, like the world can do this? Like,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. Like,
Man, one time I was getting on a plane going from Victoria to Calgary, and everybody was just filing onto the plane. And the flight attendant, this dude, he gave me, out of like 30 people in line ahead of me or whatever, was like, "This is for you." And he went and he grabbed this science magazine out of just like the mail cubby or whatever they have in the plane and gave it to me. And it was like science monthly or something, and it was all about like how planets form and stuff. And I found it interesting, but I was just like, why did this guy pick me out of this crowd of
Do I
people
look like a nerd? Or?
to give this to? And I kept like flipping through it thinking, oh, maybe there's like some fucking secret like born identity code in here and I'm like some awesome secret agent. Like, it's gotta be. Like, is there a key in here, an ID or something ridiculous like that? But actually kind of thinking about it, the girl who was next to me was really annoying. Maybe they knew that girl for some reason. She flies a lot and they were just like, you're gonna need this. But anyways, yeah.
To
that
try to
weird.
suffocate the girl?
Yeah.
No?
Oh, yeah. Get away from me. Roll it up and smack her with. Anyways, yeah, we'll probably reserve that for another Slackline. JWoww, I know you gotta head out to real work that pays you.
Yeah.
And the rest of us, I don't think have anything else to do, but we're gonna
I think Jordan should get points for mentioning the Triffids in a podcast.
You've seen Dave the Triffids?
Yeah.
It's a good movie.
All right. 2 points to Gryffindor for yeah, that's it for the Slackline podcast, episode 11. We want to thank Ken Dresen for stopping by.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and we want to thank Jordan for stopping by too.
Thank you.
And we will have you guys back either together or individually, or if you don't want to ever come back, that's your prerogative.
That's not fine though.
Yeah,
I'm going back to see Boris.
only Boris.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, so that's the Slackline with JWoww.
Wow.
The boss is coming.
That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you.
That's it. Have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Hey, mama, hey. Hey, mama, I've seen you around, messing with all the boys in this town. Hey, mama. Hey, mama, hey. You burn this whole place down just to wear the crown. What you need, but I never met a woman with so much cream. Hey mama, hey mama, hey, hey mama, I've seen you around, messing with all the poor boys in this town. Hey mama, hey mama, hey, you whole place down just to wear the crown.